Hey guys, it's Clayton from DeskRx. So this mobility video is actually going to be a little bit different. It's going to be kind of answering some questions that you guys have had. Some people that I've been working one-on-one with, and some people that have been part of this membership and have been kind of asking the same question. So I figured I would make a video to kind of address it. So there will be some movement, I promise, but it's going to be talking a little bit more about programming and like how often do I do this? Like, I mean, sometimes people will say, hey, quit your job, do your cars, which is essentially what we should all do, but gotta pay the bills, understand that. So with this video, I'm really hoping to kind of answer your question, but also kind of plant the seed on like how to really incorporate more movement throughout your day. So whether you do work at a desk or if your job takes you elsewhere, in our culture, a lot of times we find ourselves sitting, and that's kind of, we kind of all have that experience of how those outcomes can unfold with all that sitting. So my goal here is to kind of discuss some of those different things, hopefully answer your questions, and if you guys have follow-up questions on that, send them to me, email, DM me. I'm happy to kind of field them and help you guys all out. So that's my dog barking in the background if you hear that, sorry. With programming, like how often do I do mobility training? So starting off with the easy thing. So cars, controlled articular rotations. There's video number 1. If you haven't watched that, go back, watch that. It's a half hour, it's really in depth, but it is really the pinnacle, is that the tip of the iceberg maybe, with your mobility training, and then everything else kind of stems down from that. So if you don't understand cars, you should revert back to that one. But so frequency, doing your cars every day, even though that video is a half an hour long, once you understand how to work them from head to toe, that routine will really take you more closer to like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, just running through. If you're doing your cars in the morning, you want to do it at a lower radiation. So what that means is you wake up, you don't want to just hulk out and then bang out some really intense, high tension cars. You want to do lower tension, especially if you're just rolling out of bed. So you could do 10, maybe 20% of your max MVSC, so maximum voluntary contraction. So, but now if it's like midday and you're, it's lunchtime and you've already been moving your body for a bit, then go ahead and irradiate at a higher percent, anywhere from like, 40 to 70 to 80. Now, if you're about to go do something active, like you're going to go do a CrossFit workout, or you're going to a yoga class, or you're about to go rock climbing, or you're going hiking, if it's something that you're prepping your body for, you can go ahead and do your cars at like a higher tension, 70 to like 100% of your max squeeze and contraction. So I never really recommend 100% irradiation for people who are just learning cars, because really you're trying to understand your joint capsule. You're trying to trace that joint capsule as many times as you can, hundreds and hundreds of times. And then once you've played with enough lines of tensions and rotations within that joint capsule in all of your joints, then you're going to have the wherewithal, the somatic understanding of how different muscles work in different positions. So yeah, by all means, ramp it up to 100%. It's like a full workout. Like I call it flexing circles, or like, it's like anytime I have like a Kinstretch class, it's basically just like, now we are flexing in circles and squeezing. So there's a lot more stuff to Kinstretch, but that's a foundation for it. So yeah, cars every day. If you miss a day, just double up the next day. And then for the area that isn't really working well, maybe you got like a wonky knee, or my wrist didn't really feel too good after that yoga class. Like common aches and pains, they're common, they're not normal. So what that really means is that our culture has really come to just say, oh, these aches and pains, it's part of aging, it's part of getting older, it's part of putting on weight, it's just the body breaking down, which these things are true, but we just chalk it up to that a lot of times. So if we take a little bit more responsibility for how our joints are working and functioning, then which is doing your cars every day and sending the signal every day, then you're really going to start to see that change. So whenever your knee feels wonky, you got a wonky knee, or oh, I didn't feel too good up here, after I did that thing, whether it's like a forearm stand or something crazy, or whatever you're doing that you felt that. Maybe it was reaching back in the car and grabbing your purse. Whatever that thing was, don't just accept that and hope it'll go away, because it might temporarily go away, but it's not really away, it's just kind of dormant. So anytime I get like a weird twinge, whether I'm climbing or mostly climbing, that's what I do all the time. But if something feels not great, like, ooh, that didn't feel good, then I'm going to spend time with that. I'm going to spend time sending the signal and communicating with that part of my body via muscular contraction. So in doing so, let's say it's up here in this area, and don't get too hung up on like, is this my trapezius muscle? Is this like subscapularis? Is this, is that? Like, I would leave that more for like soft tissue specialists. So massage therapists, chiropractors. I mean, it's great to be informed about the body, but when push comes to shove, I mean, your body's not going to really know this is subscapularis. It's just going to think shoulder stuff, like this stuff, like that's all your body's really going to want to know. So it's good to know the biomechanics of that stuff, but what's even better is doing. So like learning through doing. So doing those cars and playing with lines of tensions and axial rotations a bunch, you're going to understand how different things work in different positions. So anytime this area is feeling wonky, you're going to run through that checklist of saying, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, let me do some scapular work. Let me do some elevation, retraction, protraction, depression. Let me do a couple cars. Okay, that felt pretty good. Let me try it with a band. Okay, so you're doing it with a band now. Let me try it on my hands and knees. Let me try it on a tabletop. So you're doing scap, protraction, retraction. Okay, what else is there? Shoulder. Okay, let me do some shoulder cars. Yep, these are pretty easy and everything feels good. So let me try it in a different position. Let me get on all fours from a child's pose. Let me do, oh wow. Okay, wow, that's really challenging. All right, so you're playing with gravity to change the intensity of the cars. Also, I want to kind of go over a concept called tick-tocking. So I think of cars a lot of times in quadrants. So, I've been using the shoulders as an example because I had a one-on-one client that was working through some shoulder stuff, and that's kind of where we had this epiphany. So he said that his cars were pretty good through, flexion. Hopefully this will work. So his cars were good through flexion, and then right when he got about here, he felt a little bit weak. Okay, so again, there's no pinching points, no pain, but he just kind of felt weak, like he didn't really have a lot of control. And then here he's okay, an extension and coming all the way back. And then he's back here, again, just kind of out here was a little bit not that great. And so then he came back here and it got easy. So my recommendation to him was to tick-tock between that hard part of that quadrant, okay? And so what that meant was he would come up, find that hard part, go to where it got easy, and then tick-tock back and forth between that. So you can kind of rep out through that range and try and groove that pattern a little bit. Play with some irradiation as well. Balls everywhere. All right, so if you got like a tennis ball or a yoga tune-up ball or lacrosse ball, you want to squeeze that and play around with different contractions in that space, okay? So kind of use it as a self-exploration and seeing what position do I feel good and where do I need to squeeze and do the different things. So becoming a student of your body is really the aim that I hope you guys all have. So, yeah, and playing with different things like that. So, reverting back, cars every day, and then spend more time with that area that doesn't feel good. So that shoulder, that knee, that ankle. So what that means is do more cars and do more pails and rails and do more ramping. So like tethering up that contraction, ramping it up, and then ramping it back down, and in different positions. Communicate with that joint, send that signal to that joint and give it that input, because joints don't really have, like joint capsules don't have blood flow to them. So the way that they receive nutrients and take away waste is through motion, okay? So getting motion into that joint. Without that motion, then it doesn't really work that well. There are other areas that get blood flow, but not really our joint capsules. We have to move them to be able to get them to work well. So rambling there, hopefully that was helpful. In terms of like training, so let's say you're not in pain, you're doing your cars, but you're like, how frequently should I do this? How frequently should I do 90-90? How frequently should I do pails and rails? And I'll be honest, I'm not an expert on programming. There are a ton of people who like program like FRC and Kinstretch for like athletes, and people training for like very specific measurable outcomes and goals and times and like max weights and stuff like that. I don't really care about that. Like I more care about humans doing human things and being able to do things that you want to do without pain. So if you want to do aerial silks, that's great. If you want to do rock climbing, awesome. I'm a big fan of that. If you want to do vinyasa yoga, if you want to like work on your handstands, if you want to just pick up your child and, you know, throw them overhead without pain, like whatever your specific goal is, I want you to be able to do that, but I don't really feel like you need to program specifically to do that, but you do need to know what that outcome is and know what the joint prerequisites are. So if you need to be able to throw your kiddo up in the air like that, you have to say, okay, do I have the shoulder prerequisites? Do I have the wrist prerequisites? You know, can I do full range of motion with my cars? Is there any pain there? And then once you can do things asymptomatically, then we need to increase the load, increase the weight. So now you might be exploring doing cars with like, let's say, I don't really have this set up here, but let's say you're in a gym and you've got this band here and it's attached to a pole here, and then I'm over here and now I'm doing my shoulder cars or whatever cars banded, okay? So this is pulling me over this way, so as I'm coming up, I'm forced to now regulate that squeeze and control that tension. That's a form of resistance. I could do that facing this way, facing this way, again, different. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And then also just like playing with weight. So like, let's say you've got those 2-pound dumbbells or those ankle weights, those sand things. You can put those around your wrist, you can hold those in your hand and do rotations. But first play around with gravity. Do them on your belly, on your quadruped, do them in a lot of different positions so you can kind of see the difference. And you typically don't need to add weight until you get a little bit more progressed. But with pails and rails, like let's say you're working from 90-90. Okay, that's a really interesting position that you can work a lot of different positional isometrics and pails and rails. But people say, how often should I do that? I spend a little bit of time in 90-90 every single damn day. So it's something that's really felt good in my body, and so I'll spend some time exploring. Sometimes I focus a little bit more on internal rotation, so that trailing hip. Other times I'll spend a little bit more time on that front hip and external rotation. And sometimes I'll just freeform, like maybe I'll just kind of listen to my body and see what it needs. Really no specific outcome that I'm trying to achieve. I'm not trying to get like my leg over my head, or I'm not trying to do a handstand, which those two things are totally fine if you want to work towards that. And you just have to ask yourself, what do I need to carve out to be able to do that? But for me, I just like to keep my body working, you know, optimally and functioning well without pain. So I'll just sit 90-90 while I'm watching Netflix or eating dinner. We eat dinner on the floor typically. We're not like so, it might sound like, oh man, they're weird, but like we're not that weird. I know sometimes people do that, and in different like cultures they eat on the floor, which, you know, I really love that idea. But we just like have a couch, and then we have this like table that we made, and we just watch Netflix and eat dinner, and I just sit on the floor. So it just works out that way. But ideally I would like to be weird enough where I do just have like our massive dinner table where people all come over, and I've got, you know, people sitting on the floor and stuff. Because I mean, that's where like Mobility Foundation is, you know, is on the floor. So I digress. Sorry for that tangent. But yeah, 90-90, I do it every day. Now, do I do like max irradiation, like pails and rails, 90-90 every day? Absolutely not. I do probably intense training, maybe 2 days a week at this point. And I rock climb 3 days a week. So It's super hard for me to answer specifics, but that'll be more like one-on-one stuff. And if you're in a class with me, or if we're climbing together, or if we're doing one-on-one sessions in person or in Skype, it can definitely help you reach your goals with that. But just as a generalization, like whatever feels good. Like if you feel like super sore or like super tired or like you just need a break, like I wouldn't recommend doing max 90 pails and rails. But if you did mobility training yesterday and you feel good and you want to keep like riding that train, go ahead, do 90 pails and rails. Do some iso movement pathways to bear sits and butterfly. Like explore some different movements, which more of the videos will start to get more into Kinstretch stuff, so more to come. But yeah, just let your body be your guide. Work on the joints that you want to improve. So if you are trying to do overhead squats and you're like, all right, I need to be able to drop it like it's hot and get this weight over here, then if your shoulders can only do this, guess what? You need to spend more time doing shoulder stuff. Same thing if you want to do handstands or whatever you want to do. You've got to answer that question for yourself and be honest. Like, okay, so I want to do this thing. Do I have the joint prerequisites for it? Wrist, elbows, shoulders, spinal. Like, do I have all these prerequisites to do what I want? And if the answer is no, then go ahead and spend a little bit of time each day, frequency, and send that signal to that part of your body. Okay, so hopefully I'm not rambling too much, but I have kind of been toying around with creating like a separate membership for like desk specific stuff. So just like more like mini flows, like 1 minute flows, like 2 minute flows, 3 minute flows for people who work a desk job. Because really that's ultimately what like DeskRx is kind of moving towards, is that I want to be able to offer like specific bite-sized minute clips that people can utilize. So they'll have like a whole library saying, okay, what's not feeling great? Neck. Okay, and then you've got 10 neck videos to choose from, and they're just little bite-sized videos. So I'm kind of exploring maybe doing something like that in the future. Just let me know what your thoughts are on that, but that'll be like kind of down the road. But I wanted to give you the framework and the idea for how you can think of this. So if you've been doing your cars, if you're doing pails and rails, I want you to try and think of how can you incorporate this stuff more into your everyday life. So think of it through the lens of a desk job. So we're seated here, okay? So maybe you don't have the luxury of a standing desk where it rises to stand and then comes down to sitting. So maybe you're forced to sit in 3-hour meetings, or you don't have a standing desk. There are some options here for you. I just want to give you a couple ideas, and then you can kind of run with it and explore on your own. So here, think of how you sit. A lot of times people will cross their legs, okay? But if you ask someone to cross their legs, or if you just think of how you intuitively do it, how do you do it typically? A lot of times you'll get lean over here, lift, and then come over, okay? Or some variation. You might pick up like that, or you might come up here and then lift a little bit higher. So this is a demonstration of flexibility. This is flexibility in my hips that's demonstrated. But if I want to demonstrate my mobility, my ability to move my body on its own, force, its own accord, then it'll be a little bit different. So this is going to be flexibility in my hip, passive, good, flexibility, coming back down. This is going to be mobility, hip flexion, knee extension, axial rotation, holding hover, soft landing. Hard, right? Hip cramp. And that's good. Cramping is good. It's your body getting used to using force in that position, and so it's not bad. I'm going to make a whole video on cramping, so I'll get into that. And then from here, I want you to play around with placing your right hand on your right knee and try and pop that ankle off first, and then lift and extend back. So hopefully you got all this inside tissue firing and feeling. So probably felt pretty gnarly, right? All right, so second thing we can do here is assessing internal rotation. This is one of my favorites. So you're seated, both feet are flat on the ground. All right, and we're gonna take both of our fists, and you're gonna kind of keep this little part of circle of your fist on both sides into that kind of bony prominence there on your knee. And we're gonna start with the right. So hover that right foot, squeeze both of the knees into the fist in the midline, keep that squeeze, and we're internally rotating the hip. Ankle comes out, try and maximize that. Good, back down. 5 more reps. Lift, squeeze into the midline, lift out, back down. Good, lift out, squeeze into the fist, lift out, lift out. You should feel it like right here. Maybe a cramp, back down. Also too, you might feel that you don't have much rotation. You're like, how the heck do I rotate here? So you might just not understand how this works in that capsule, or it might just be really hard for you. So regardless, you might only come out to here, but as long as you're moving out here and nowhere else in the body, like you're not lifting your sit bone or anything like that, then you're gonna be working on that internal rotation. We'll start in the left leg. So squeezing the fist in, hover the left foot, keep that squeeze in the fist, internally rotate at the hip, which makes the ankle go out. Good, back down. Squeeze in, internally rotate. Keep squeezing, try to max that out. Back down. Whew. 2 more times. Squeeze, internally rotate. Keep that squeeze, re-squeeze. Get as far out as you can. Back down. Far out. 1 more time. Squeeze. Good. As much as you can. Lift, 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 lift. Smile. And good. So that is internal rotation. You probably felt a lot of stuff up here working. That's good. So another thing I want to demonstrate is, these are 2 of my favorites, is just getting a nice internal rotation here. So depending on how weird you want to look at work, and hopefully, you know, my aim is to kind of deconstruct that weird and just make it a little bit more common. So people, like where I work in my other job, people see me doing this all the time, they don't even think anything of it. So this is just a nice passive internal rotation of that capsule of the hip. Good, and then coming here, this will probably be a little bit more of an obvious one, but just getting some nice external rotation. So kind of lining that front shin up on your chair, and then just getting a nice stretch here. You can rotate your belly to the right and left. Also, if you have a sturdy desk or like a cube, you can utilize that as well. I do that all the time. If you're using a chair, try not to fall if it's rolling. So, and then obviously too, you can do tons of neck stuff. You can do different shoulder stuff seated. So that's a lot more, probably a longer video, but I won't get into. But hopefully that this was beneficial for you in thinking of how can I incorporate more mobility throughout my day. So it's like frequency of exposure. How often can I do this human movement stuff throughout the day? So it's not like, okay, I'm gonna do mobility for like half an hour, 3 days a week. Like that shit's not gonna cut it. Like, sorry for this swearing, but it's not gonna cut it. Something to consider is these snippets, these micro moments of time where you can really start to incorporate more movement. So that 3 minutes when your smart ones is microwaving in the office microwave, that 10 minutes you're sitting at a bus stop where there's a bus stop sign and you can lock your arm up there and do some pails and rails rotation. You know, that 2 minutes in the grocery line, that 5-minute light that you're cycling through twice. Like, what kind of stuff can you do as you're waiting at that light? What kind of options you have available to you, even in your spine, to start introducing more movement, sending more signals so that you're not so physically inactive during the whole day. So that was a lot of rambling. Hopefully this answered some of your guys' questions and just get some ideas turning and hopefully helping you to incorporate more movement, more mobility training throughout your day. All right, have a good one.